you think that because of the racist history of America, that you do have this double standard where, yes, you're right. If things were reversed the other way to white people, we'd be outraged about it. But since they're not, that we're not so outraged about the pro-black racism or anti-white racism. We don't care about that as much. You can make that argument, but at least make that argument. At least be clear that that is your position, that it's like, yeah, I don't think it's the same thing. And that's okay. I don't know that I completely disagree with that, like I love Maj Touré. I think he's fucking great. I think he does great work. I think he's a real interesting guy. I like listening to his stuff. And he's got that group Black Guns Matter. Now, I think that's great. Like I said previously, I think that's like the best kind of identity politics, But if someone had a group called White Guns Matter, I don't think libertarians would be as into them as they are with him. Now, that's okay. You can have your prejudice and you can make a justification for that, Like, well, here's why I think this one is okay and this one isn't. Fine. But don't pretend that you don't have that prejudice. Don't pretend that you're not. So that's kind of my major issue. And I take, like, my position on this whole thing is that I can't really justify the prejudice. I think that we should just call balls and strikes, be right down the middle. I don't have a pro-white agenda. I don't have a pro-black agenda. I don't really even have a pro-Jewish agenda. I don't I just don't think that's right. And if we're trying to objectively talk about what's right and wrong, I think we should leave that shit out. Now, I understand that there's a history of racism in the country. Obviously, I don't think any sane person acting in good faith is going to tell you that, like, yeah, black people haven't had fucked up laws against them in the history of America and all of this shit. But I just think that I don't buy into the idea that you can always be righting the wrongs of the past by judging people in different ways now. So the whole thing that is wrong about the past is that black people were treated differently under the law. They were judged and treated shitty by people. And I don't think that doing that the other way justifies that, especially since most of those people are dead. I think that the way you undo that is to say, we're going to stop doing that. Let's have equality under the law. Let's not, judge people based on their race, or at least try to play it down the middle. And I mean, literally, I think that one generation later in Germany after the Holocaust, if people had been like, well, you shouldn't go to this German, Aryan-owned store, you should go to this Jewish-owned store because of what they went through. Even then, I'd be like, it's a generation later, there was a war fought, this is over, let's move on. Like, this doesn't make sense to harp on what happened. Like, you want to have a museum about it and tell the story, and sure, I'm fine with all of that. But to write into, if they were to write into the law some preference for Jewish businesses, I'd oppose that. Because I think it's wrong. It's not fair.
Sounds annoying too.
Yeah, it's just right.
Real
it's
Jewy.
It is super Jewy. Super Jewy. Let me take a guess who wrote those laws. But you know what I mean? And it's just in America to sit here and talk about institutional racism and all of these things when it's like, look, dude, you're never going to completely undo the fucked up things of the past. That's history. Unfortunately, every single country out there, every society, if you go 100, 200 years in the past, there was some brutal shit happening. For most countries, it's still going on right now. I think we're much better off to focus on the brutality that's still going on. You focus on like the genocide in Yemen or some shit like that, where it's like, oh yeah, that's still going on and is really bad. If you're against slavery, take a look at Libya. That, you know what I mean? Like, at the very least, be like, since both of those were caused by the American federal government, maybe we should be like, hey, let's not cause any more of those, or stop the one in progress in Yemen. So that just makes more sense to me. But in a country like America, it does seem to me like, all right, we had a civil rights movement in the 60s. We've had affirmative action basically since then, huge welfare programs that have been obviously disasters. And we've built a culture of people bending over backward to not be perceived as racist, but HR departments throughout every major, corporation, all of this stuff. It just seems to me like at what point can you just go, let's just call it down the middle. And if you're doing that, when you see the media constantly stoking these flames in this one direction, it's this one kind of, working up hostilities against white people direction. I don't see why anyone who's trying to challenge this whole system would support that or go along with it. It's like, no, this is so obvious. And like, again, I think that I'm, on solid ground saying, I mean, it's always hard to judge what you yourself would do in a different situation, but I'm pretty certain that if this was all going in the other direction, I'd be the first to stand up against that. Like if there were quotas and a movement to support white businesses and this shit, I'd be like, this is wrong. Like, this is wrong that we're doing this. So I think I'm on solid ground saying it's wrong. It's wrong this way.